My name is Ramona, and I'm 34 years old. I was a marketing executive in Chicago until the company downsized and I lost my job. After a decade of independence, my family insisted I move back to my small hometown of Willow Creek. My parents, Thomas and Margaret, and my brother Daniel, said they'd support me during this difficult time. I was grateful at first, but something about their insistence felt off. I couldn't have imagined what was really happening. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if family drama gets your attention, because trust me, this story is about to take a very dark turn. Growing up in Willow Creek was suffocating for someone with big dreams. Our town had fewer than 10,000 people, and most families had lived there for generations, including mine. My father Thomas owned the largest real estate company in the county, and my mother Margaret was the perfect small-town wife who volunteered for every committee and hosted the most talked-about dinner parties. From childhood, there was an unspoken expectation that I would eventually join the family business. "Ramona, why dream of skyscrapers when you can build your life right here?" my father would say whenever I talked about moving to a big city. My mother was more subtle but equally persistent. "The Parkers have been in Willow Creek for 4 generations. This is where you belong." My brother Daniel was content following the prescribed path. 2 years older than me, he joined our father's company straight out of college and quickly became the golden child. He married his high school sweetheart Amy, bought a house 3 blocks from our parents, and had 2 perfect children. The Willow Creek dream personified. The only person who truly supported my ambitions was my grandmother, Nana June. She was different from the rest of the family, fiercely independent, well-traveled, and modern in her thinking, despite being in her 70s. "Don't let them clip your wings," she would tell me during our private conversations on her wraparound porch. "I stayed in this town my whole life because your grandfather needed to run the family business. I don't regret my life, but I do wonder about the roads not taken." The night before I left for college in Chicago, Nana June gave me a journal with a note inside. "Write your own story, Ramona. Make it a good one." That journal became my most treasured possession. College was my first taste of freedom, and I thrived. When graduation approached, my parents naturally assumed I'd return to Willow Creek. The fight that followed when I announced I'd accepted a position at a marketing firm in Chicago was explosive. "After everything we've given you," my father shouted, "this is how you repay us." My mother cried for days. Daniel stopped speaking to me entirely. Only Nana June drove up to attend my graduation. The next 12 years in Chicago were transformative. Starting as a junior copywriter, I worked my way up to executive level at one of the city's most prestigious marketing firms. I bought my own condo, made amazing friends, dated interesting people, and built the independent life I had always wanted. My relationship with my parents remained strained but cordial, with obligatory holiday visits and occasional phone calls. Then 3 months ago, everything changed. First, Nana June passed away unexpectedly from a stroke. I was devastated. She was 86, but had been in perfect health, still living independently in her beautiful Victorian house on Maple Street. My grief was complicated by guilt. I hadn't visited her in almost 8 months, always too busy with work. 2 weeks after her funeral, I was called into my boss's office and informed that due to a corporate merger, my position was being eliminated. 12 years of climbing the ladder gone in a 15-minute meeting. I received a decent severance package, but nothing that would sustain me long-term in Chicago. The job loss hit me harder than I'd expected. My identity had become so entwined with my career that I felt completely lost. Who was Ramona Parker without her executive title? The timing couldn't have been worse. The economy was struggling and marketing positions were scarce. A week into my unemployment, my mother called. This wasn't unusual. She'd been calling more frequently since Nana June's death. But her tone was different this time. "Ramona, your father and I have been talking. We think you should move back home for a while." My immediate reaction was resistance. "Mom, I'm 34. I can't move back to my childhood bedroom." "Just temporarily," she insisted. "Until you find another job. Think of the money you'll save. And honestly, sweetheart, we worry about you being alone during such a difficult time." I brushed her off, but she was persistent. The calls increased. My father joined in, then Daniel. They presented rational arguments. My expensive Chicago rent was draining my savings. The job market in the city was oversaturated. I needed emotional support after losing Nana June. Besides, my father added during one call, your mother and I inherited June's estate, and we could use your help sorting through her things. After 3 weeks of job rejections and dwindling savings, their arguments started making sense. Perhaps a few months at home wouldn't be terrible. I could regroup, save money, and launch a stronger job search. The day before I agreed to move back, I received a strange call from someone named Harold Jenkins, who identified himself as your grandmother's attorney. Miss Parker, regarding your grandmother's, well, there's something important you should. My father picked up the other line at that moment. Harold, is that you? I told you I'd handle this. His voice was sharp. Thomas, I really think. Well, discuss this at the office tomorrow. My father cut him off. Sorry about that, Ramona. Just some legal loose ends with June's estate. Nothing for you to worry about. The call left me with an uneasy feeling, but I was too overwhelmed with packing and saying goodbye to my Chicago life to give it much thought. As I packed up my condo, each box sealed felt like closing a chapter of my independence. My neighbor Janice helped me pack the kitchen while I sorted through my closet. Are you sure about this, Ramona? She asked. Moving back to your hometown at our age can be complicated. It's just temporary, I assured her, though the words sounded hollow even to me. 3 months max, just until I get back on my feet. She gave me a look that said she knew better but didn't push it. As a farewell gift, she gave me a small plant. Something to bring back to Chicago when you return, she said with pointed emphasis on when. The night before I left, I found myself rereading entries in Nana June's journal. One passage from years ago stood out. Family can be both our greatest strength and our greatest weakness. Love doesn't always look like we expect it to. Sometimes it's clutching too tightly when it should be letting go. I should have paid more attention to her words. Maybe then I would have recognized the warning signs sooner. The drive from Chicago to Willow Creek took just under 4 hours. With each mile marker, the skyscrapers and bustling energy of the city faded in my rearview mirror, replaced by endless cornfields and small towns with familiar names. By the time I turned onto Elm Street, where my parents still lived in the colonial-style house I'd grown up in, my stomach was in knots. Their welcome was overwhelming. My mother burst out of the front door before I could even turn off the engine, arms outstretched and eyes teary. My father stood on the porch, beaming with unusual warmth. Even Daniel had come over with his wife and kids. Welcome home, sweetheart. My mother enveloped me in a hug that lasted too long. She pulled back to examine me. You've lost weight. Don't worry, we'll fix that right up. My father approached as I popped the trunk. I'll get all this. Daniel, give me a hand with Ramona's things. Dad, I can carry my own bags, I protested. He waved me off. Nonsense. You're home now. Let us take care of you. There was something disconcerting about his insistence, but I chalked it up to small-town values and parental concern. The entire family ushered me inside like I was a returning hero, though I'd done nothing except fail professionally and retreat to my childhood home. We fixed up your room, my mother announced proudly as we moved through the house. I think you'll find it very comfortable. The dining room table was set with the good china and loaded with all my childhood favorites: pot roast mashed potatoes, green bean casserole. My mother's famous apple pie cooled on the counter. It felt like Thanksgiving in April. During dinner, the conversation was dominated by family news and local gossip, but it kept circling back to me in ways that made me uncomfortable. So, how much severance did they give you? My father asked between bites of pot roast. Dad, Daniel warned. What? It's a practical question. We need to know what we're working with. Thomas, not at dinner, my mother chided, though she looked equally curious. It's fine, I said, though it wasn't. The package was fair. I should be okay for a few months while I job hunt. My father nodded thoughtfully. Good, but no rush. Take your time figuring out your next steps. After dinner, my mother finally led me upstairs to my room. I stepped through the doorway and froze. This wasn't my childhood bedroom. My twin bed with the purple comforter was gone, replaced by a queen-sized bed with a floral bedspread that looked like something from my mother's decorating magazines. The walls, once covered with my collection of vintage movie posters, were now painted a soft beige and adorned with generic landscape paintings. My desk, where I'd written in journals and dreamed of escape, was replaced by a delicate vanity table. "Do you love it?" My mother clasped her hands together in anticipation. "I wanted to make it perfect for you." I scanned the room for any trace of my former self. Where are all my things? My posters, my books, my yearbooks? "Oh, we stored all that in the attic," she said dismissively. "You don't need those old things anymore. This is much more appropriate for a woman your age." The loss of my personal space hit harder than I expected. Even during brief holiday visits, my room had remained largely untouched, a preserved memorial to my teenage self. Now it felt like they'd erased that person entirely. "I think I'd like to see my things," I said. "Maybe bring some of them down." My mother looked briefly annoyed before recovering her smile. "Of course, dear, but you're probably tired from the drive. Well, dig through the attic tomorrow." That night I lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, feeling like a guest in what was supposed to be my own space. Around midnight I heard hushed voices in the hallway. I crept to the door and listened. "Did you move the papers?" It was my father's voice, tense and low. "They're in your office safe," my mother replied. "Do you think she suspects anything?" "How could she? But Harold needs to back off. I can't believe he tried to call her directly." "Well, handle it, Thomas, just like we discussed." Their footsteps retreated down the hall, leaving me with a growing sense of unease. What papers were they talking about? And why would they need to hide them from me? The next day, I asked about accessing the attic to retrieve my belongings. "Oh, that old door sticks terribly," my mother said. "Your father will have to help, and he's in meetings all day." When I tried the attic door anyway, I found it locked. Later that afternoon, I walked downtown to meet my childhood friend Samantha for coffee. She'd stayed in Willow Creek, opening a successful bakery on Main Street. Unlike most locals, she'd actually left for culinary school before returning by choice. The town hadn't changed much, same storefronts with fresh paint, same gazebo in the town square, same familiar faces that did double takes when they recognized me. Samantha hugged me tightly when I entered the bakery. "Ramona Parker, Chicago, spat you back out, huh?" Her directness was refreshing after my family's strange behavior. Over coffee and pastries, I filled her in on my job loss and temporary relocation. Samantha's expression grew increasingly concerned as I described my first 24 hours back home. "That doesn't sound like moving your stuff to the attic," she said after I mentioned my transformed bedroom. "That sounds like erasing you." "That's dramatic." I laughed, though her words resonated uncomfortably. Samantha leaned forward. "Look, I don't want to alarm you, but something seems off with your folks lately." "What do you mean?" "Just little things. Your dad seems really interested in your grandmother's estate, for one. He was at the bank with some lawyer the day after her funeral, which seemed rushed. And your mom has been telling people you've been struggling in Chicago for years, which I knew wasn't true because we follow each other on Instagram." Her words sent a chill through me. Why would my mother lie about me struggling? When I returned home, my father was waiting in the living room. "There you are." I was getting worried. "I just went for coffee with Sam," I said, uncomfortable with having to explain my whereabouts at 34. "You should have told us where you were going," he said, his tone light, but his eyes serious. That evening, he brought up something that hadn't been mentioned at dinner the previous night. "While you're getting back on your feet, I think it would make sense for me to temporarily help manage your finances," he suggested, "just to make sure you're maximizing your severance package." "That's really not necessary," I said firmly. "Just think about it," he pressed. "It's easy to make financial mistakes during transitional periods." The next morning, I discovered a stack of mail on the kitchen counter with my name on it. The envelopes had been opened. "Mom, why is my mail open?" She didn't look up from her coffee. "Oh, I thought you might have bills that needed immediate attention. Just trying to help, sweetheart." Later that day, I met the family attorney when he stopped by the house. Jacob Mercer was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 40s, with an expensive suit and uncomfortable manner. "Nice to finally meet you, Ramona," he said, shaking my hand with a grip that felt too tight. "Your parents speak of you often." Funny they've never mentioned you before, I replied. He exchanged a quick glance with my father that I couldn't interpret. Jacob took over after our longtime attorney retired, my father explained smoothly. He's handling all our affairs now, including your grandmother's estate. What about Harold Jenkins? I asked. He called himself Nana's attorney when he contacted me. The room tensed imperceptibly. Jacob cleared his throat. Harold was assisting with some aspects of the estate, but he's no longer involved. All legal matters are now consolidated under my oversight. My father ushered me out shortly after claiming they had boring legal matters to discuss. That evening, I checked my personal email and found bank notifications I didn't recognize. When I logged into my accounts, I discovered my mailing address had been changed to my father's business office. A sick feeling began forming in the pit of my stomach. By my second week back in Willow Creek, the initial warmth of my family's welcome had transformed into something more concerning. What had begun as seemingly helpful suggestions became increasingly controlling behaviors. Every morning over breakfast, my mother would ask about my plans for the day, her tone casual but her eyes watchful. "Just tell us where you're going so we don't worry," she would say if I was vague about my intentions. When I mentioned a job interview I had scheduled in Springfield about an hour away, both my parents reacted with immediate concern. "Springfield, that's so far?" my mother said, exchanging a look with my father. "The job market there is terrible right now," my father added. "I don't think it's worth the drive." When I insisted on going anyway, I woke up the morning of the interview to find my car wouldn't start. My father offered to have his mechanic look at it, but by then it was too late to make the appointment. I began noticing job listings left conspicuously around the house, all for positions at local businesses owned by my parents' friends. A marketing coordinator role at the local newspaper, an event planner for the Willow Creek Chamber of Commerce, an office manager at my father's real estate company. "Susan Miller's daughter would love to have your expertise at the paper," my mother mentioned casually over dinner. "And you wouldn't even need a car. It's just a 10-minute walk from here." The suggestion that I wouldn't need a car struck me as odd. It was as if they were planning for me to have an extremely limited radius of movement. Meanwhile, my father had begun insisting I attend business meetings with him. "You should learn the family business," he said. "It's never too late to join us at Parker Real Estate." During these meetings, he would introduce me to longtime clients and business partners with uncomfortable phrases like, "Ramona's finally seen the value of coming back to her roots," or, "The corporate world chewed her up, but she's home where she belongs now." I felt like I was being rebranded as the prodigal daughter who had failed in the big city and returned repentant rather than a successful professional facing a temporary setback. My mother, for her part, had ramped up her passive-aggressive commentary about everything from my appearance to my cooking skills. "You might want to wear something more flattering," she'd say when I dressed in my usual Chicago style. "People here dress differently." Or, "I noticed you've been sleeping until 7:30. In Willow Creek, productive people are up by 6. One evening, my brother Daniel stopped by without his wife and kids, an unusual occurrence. We sat on the back porch while our parents were at a community function. "How are you settling in?" he asked, sounding genuinely concerned. "Honestly, it's weird being back. Mom and Dad are being super controlling." Daniel sighed. "They're just worried about you. Worried about what I'm an adult who lost a job. It happens." He hesitated before speaking. "They've been concerned about your mental state. After Nana June died and then losing your job, they think you might be more fragile than you appear." Fragile. The word felt like an insult. "I'm not fragile, I'm unemployed. There's a difference." Daniel looked uncomfortable. "They just want to make sure you're okay. Maybe the extended unemployment is for the best, you know. Give you time to really reset." His words echoed our parents' sentiments too precisely to be coincidental. They had clearly been discussing me as a family, framing my situation as some sort of psychological breakdown rather than a simple career setback. The following day, I discovered my car keys were missing from the hook by the door where I always left them. "Dad took your car in for some routine maintenance," my mother explained when I asked. "He noticed the check engine light was on." It hadn't been, but there was no point arguing. I was effectively stranded at the house for the day. When my car was returned that evening, I immediately checked the odometer. I'd driven it very little since arriving in Willow Creek, yet somehow it had 30 fewer miles than I remembered. Someone had driven it and then rolled back the odometer. My suspicions deepened the next day when Samantha called me. Weird question, but is your car a blue Honda Accord? Yes, why? Because I just saw it parked outside Jacob Mercer's law office. I assumed you were there for some reason. My blood ran cold. Samantha, I'm at home right now. My car's in the driveway. There was a pause. No, Ramona. I'm looking right at your car. The license plate matches what you told me before. After we hung up, I went to check the driveway. My car was indeed there, but the hood was warm to the touch. That night, I went into my attached bathroom to find a small orange prescription bottle sitting on the counter with my name on it. The medication inside was unfamiliar small white pills I definitely hadn't been prescribed. I quickly looked up the medication name online. It was an antipsychotic typically prescribed for delusional disorders and severe anxiety. The prescribing doctor was someone I'd never heard of. I immediately tried calling my regular doctor in Chicago, but as the call connected, my mother knocked on the bathroom door. Ramona, who are you talking to in there? Before I could answer, the bathroom door opened. I hadn't realized it didn't lock from the inside. My mother saw the phone in my hand and reached for it. You shouldn't be making calls this late. You know how you get when you're overtired. She took the phone from my hand and ended the call with my doctor's office. Later that night, I overheard another hushed conversation between my parents in the hallway. Jacob says he'll have the papers ready by next week, my father was saying. Will that be enough time? My mother asked. It has to be. Harold is still making noise about the will. If he contacts her again, he won't. Jacob warned him about attorney-client privilege. The next day, my parents suggested we attend family counseling together. Just to help with the transition of having you back home, my mother explained. I reluctantly agreed, hoping it might give me a chance to address their controlling behavior with a neutral third party. But when we arrived, I realized we were at a psychiatrist's office, not a family therapist. Dr. Levine greeted my parents by their first names, suggesting an existing relationship. When we sat down in his office, it became clear this was not our first appointment, at least not for my parents. So, Ramona, Dr. Levine began, your parents tell me you've been experiencing some paranoid thoughts since returning home, feeling like people are against you or trying to control you. I stared at him in disbelief, then at my parents who wore expressions of practiced concern. That's not, I began, but my father interrupted. It's okay to admit you're struggling, sweetheart. That's why we're here. Dr. Levine nodded sympathetically. Your parents mentioned you've been having trouble sleeping, experiencing mood swings, and making accusations about them tampering with your car. With a sickening clarity, I realized what was happening. They were building a case that I was mentally unstable. But why the meeting continued with my parents describing behaviors I hadn't exhibited and thoughts I hadn't expressed. When I tried to defend myself, Dr. Levine made notes that seemed to interpret my defenses as further evidence of my condition. By the end of the session, I'd been given a prescription for the same medication I'd found in my bathroom and a follow-up appointment scheduled for the following week. As we drove home, I remained silent, my mind racing. Whatever game my family was playing, I needed to find out the truth before it was too late. Sunday morning, my parents left for church as they did every week. I'd claimed a headache to stay behind, and for once they didn't insist I join them. The moment their car disappeared down the street, I sprang into action. My father's home office had always been off limits when I was growing up, and nothing had changed in that regard. The heavy oak door was locked, but I remembered that the key was kept on top of the doorframe, an old hiding place from my childhood that apparently hadn't been updated. The office was immaculate as always, with leather-bound books lining the walls and family photos arranged precisely on the credenza. I went straight for the filing cabinet behind the desk, but found it locked. Next, I tried his desk drawers, also locked. I scanned the room, wondering where my father would keep important documents. My eyes fell on the large painting of a sailing ship that hung on the wall. It had always struck me as out of place in the otherwise traditional office. On a hunch, I lifted it from the wall and found exactly what I'd expected, a wall safe. The combination was likely something meaningful to my father. I tried his birthday, nothing. My mother's birthday, nothing. Their anniversary, nothing. Then I tried the date Parker Real Estate was founded, and the safe clicked open. Inside were several folders and a small cash box. I pulled out the folders and spread them on his desk. The first one I opened contained papers related to Nana June's estate. I began reading, and my heart started pounding harder with each paragraph. According to the will, the real will prepared by Harold Jenkins, Nana June had left the majority of her estate directly to me, not to my parents. Her Victorian home, her investments, and a substantial life insurance policy were all designated for her beloved granddaughter Ramona, who had the courage to chart her own course. My parents had received some family heirlooms and a modest cash bequest, but nothing close to the full estate they'd led me to believe they'd inherited. The will included a personal letter to me that I'd never received, explaining that she wanted to support my independent life and ensure I would never feel financially trapped. The next folder contained documents that made my blood run cold. They were drafted legal papers for a conservatorship with my father named as the conservator of my estate and person. The filing claimed I was mentally unstable and financially irresponsible, unable to manage my own affairs following a psychological breakdown after employment termination. Attached were fabricated exhibits to support their case photos of me looking tired or upset that had been taken since my return, often after arguments with them labeled as evidence of my erratic behavior. There were printed emails from my mother to various friends describing incidents that had never happened, times I'd supposedly gotten lost in our small town, accused strangers of following me, or exhibited paranoid behaviors. Most disturbing were bank statements showing my parents had already accessed some of my accounts. They'd transferred funds from my savings to an account I didn't recognize and had applied for a line of credit in my name. The third folder contained text message printouts between my parents and brother spanning the past month. She's taking the bait. Mentioned financial concerns today. Dad. Remember to emphasize how much better off she'll be here. Play up the supportive family angle. Mom. What if she suspects something? Daniel. She won't. She's too caught up in her own crisis to see what's happening. Dad. Once the conservatorship is approved, how do we handle the inheritance? Daniel. We'll explain that it's being managed for her benefit. By the time she figures anything out, it'll be too late to contest. Dad. Another folder contained property listings and purchase agreements my parents had already begun spending my inheritance. They'd put deposits on a vacation home in Florida and a new office building for the family business, using funds from Nana June's estate that rightfully belonged to me. The final and most damning folder contained falsified medical records and doctor's notes documenting a history of mental instability that simply didn't exist. They had created an entire medical history of anxiety disorders, panic attacks, and delusional episodes going back to my college years. Some of the records were on letterhead from doctors I'd never heard of, with signatures that looked suspiciously similar to my father's handwriting. I was so engrossed in the documents that I didn't hear the front door open. My mother's voice from the doorway startled me. Ramona, what are you doing in your father's office? I looked up to see her standing there, eyes wide, as she took in the scattered papers on the desk. For a moment, her mask of maternal concern slipped, revealing something harder underneath. You shouldn't be in here, she said, her voice tight. You're not well, sweetheart. You're imagining things again. Imagining. I held up the conservatorship papers. Like I'm imagining these, or the fake medical records, or the will that shows Nana June left her estate to me, not you and Dad. My mother's face hardened. She called out, Thomas, she's in your office. Heavy footsteps rushed down the hall and my father appeared behind her. His expression changed from concern to anger when he saw the open safe and documents spread across his desk. What do you think you're doing? He demanded, striding into the room. I stood my ground. Finding out the truth. You've been lying to me about Nana's will. You're trying to steal my inheritance and have me declared incompetent so I can't stop you. My father's approach shifted instantly. His voice softened to a patronizing tone. This is exactly why we're concerned, Ramona. These paranoid delusions. They're not delusions when I'm holding the evidence. I shook the papers at him. You forged medical records. You're planning to take control of my finances through a conservatorship. You've already started spending my inheritance." My mother stepped forward, tears suddenly appearing in her eyes. "We're only trying to protect you from yourself. After you lost your job, we could see you weren't coping well." My father moved to block the doorway. "This is why we need to protect you. You break into private spaces, make wild accusations against the people who love you most." "Love me?" I laughed bitterly. "You've been gaslighting me since I arrived, isolating me, controlling me, medicating me without my knowledge or consent. That's not love, that's abuse." Daniel appeared in the hallway behind them. "What's going on?" "Your sister is having an episode," my father said firmly. "She's been going through my private papers and is making accusations." Daniel looked at me with what appeared to be genuine concern. "Ramona, maybe you should sit down. You don't look well." They were closing ranks, creating a united front against me. I was trapped in my childhood home, being told I was crazy for seeing exactly what was happening right in front of me. That evening, my family convened what they called an intervention in the living room. My father sat in his armchair like a judge presiding over a court. My mother perched anxiously on the sofa, and Daniel stood by the fireplace, arms crossed. I was directed to sit alone in the center of the room, feeling like a defendant on trial. "We love you, Ramona." My father began, his voice gentle but firm. "That's why we've made some difficult decisions." He slid a stack of papers across the coffee table toward me. "These are conservatorship papers. We're asking you to sign them voluntarily." I didn't reach for them. "And if I don't," his expression hardened slightly, "then we'll have to involve the courts, which would be much more traumatic for everyone, especially you. Your behavior today proves you're not thinking clearly." "My behavior? You mean discovering you're trying to steal my inheritance and declare me mentally incompetent?" My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "See how she twists everything, Thomas. This is exactly what Dr. Levine warned us about." "We're only doing what's best for you," my father continued. "The stress of losing your job, coming back home, it's clearly been too much. You're not making rational decisions." "Like what?" I challenged. "Breaking into your father's office," Daniel offered. "Accusing us of tampering with your car," my mother added. "Refusing to take the medication prescribed for your condition," my father concluded. Each example was a normal reaction to their abnormal behavior, twisted to sound like symptoms of mental instability. It was a masterfully executed gaslighting campaign. "This is temporary," my father assured me, his voice softening again. "Just until you're back on your feet. I'll manage your finances, make sure your bills are paid, help you find suitable work here in town." "You mean control my inheritance?" I interrupted. "The one Nana June left directly to me, not to you." A flash of anger crossed my father's face before he controlled it. "Your grandmother wasn't thinking clearly in her final months. Harold Jenkins took advantage of her confusion to draft a will that didn't reflect her true wishes." "That's not true," I said. "Nana was sharp until the day she died. Everyone in town knew that." "She was just like you," my mother said sadly. "So convinced she knew best, hiding her deterioration from everyone. The paranoia runs in the family, I'm afraid." The implication stunned me. "What did you do to Nana?" My parents exchanged glances, and Daniel looked uncomfortable for the first time. "We took care of her just like we're trying to take care of you," my father said carefully. "Sometimes that means making decisions others don't understand." A horrifying possibility dawned on me. "Did you try to get conservatorship over her too? Is that why she changed her will to bypass you and leave everything to me directly?" The silence that followed confirmed my suspicion. Nana June had recognized what they were capable of and had tried to protect me from beyond the grave. "You didn't deserve that money," my father finally said, his voice rising. "We're the ones who took care of her, who checked on her every day, who managed her affairs, who put up with her stubborn independence long after it was safe. We've earned this after putting up with your ingratitude for years." My mother added, her mask of concern slipping completely. "You left us, Ramona. You turned your back on this family while we stayed and did our duty." Their true motivations were finally exposed: resentment, entitlement, and greed, all wrapped in a veneer of parental concern. I stood up. "I'm not signing anything." My father's expression darkened. Then you leave us no choice but to proceed with the court filing. In the meantime, I think it's best if we hold on to your phone and car keys. You're clearly not in a state to be making calls or driving." I'd anticipated this and had already hidden my phone under the mattress in my room. The car keys were another matter. They'd been keeping those from me already. "I'm an adult. You can't just confiscate my belongings." "We can if you're a danger to yourself or others," my father said smoothly. And after today's episode, I think that's clear. That night, I felt like a prisoner in my childhood home. They took turns checking on me, knocking on my door under the pretense of bringing tea or asking if I needed anything. In reality, they were ensuring I didn't try to leave or contact anyone. I pretended to take the medication they brought me, but hid the pills under my tongue and disposed of them in the toilet when they left. I needed to keep my mind clear. 2 days later, my parents announced we would be having dinner with Jacob Mercer and Dr. Levine. "Just a casual gathering," my mother insisted, though nothing about it felt casual. I recognized it for what it was, a final attempt to convince me to sign the conservatorship papers voluntarily before they took legal action. They wanted witnesses to my unstable behavior if I refused. As we sat around the dining table with my parents' hand-picked allies, the conversation was steered toward my condition and the difficult time I was going through. "Ramona has always been high-strung," my mother told Dr. Levine as if I wasn't sitting right there. "But since losing her job, it's escalated dramatically." "I understand you've been experiencing some paranoid thoughts," Dr. Levine prompted, looking at me with practiced concern. I took a deep breath and decided it was time to turn the tables. "Actually, Dr. Levine, I've been experiencing something very specific. I've discovered my parents have been lying about my grandmother's will, attempting to steal my inheritance, and building a case to have me declared mentally incompetent through a fraudulent conservatorship." The table fell silent. Jacob Mercer stopped with his fork halfway to his mouth. "I found the documents in my father's safe," I continued calmly, "including medical records that were forged, photos that were misrepresented, and text messages discussing how to manipulate me into a position where I couldn't fight back." "Ramona, this is exactly what we're talking about," my father said, his voice strained. "These delusions. They're not delusions if they're true," I countered. "Mr. Mercer, did you know that forging medical records is a felony, or that proceeding with a conservatorship filing based on fraudulent evidence could result in disbarment?" Jacob Mercer's face paled slightly. He looked at my father, who was turning an alarming shade of red. "Thomas, perhaps we should discuss this privately," Jacob suggested. "There's nothing to discuss," my father snapped. "My daughter is unwell and making outlandish accusations." "Then you won't mind if we all review the documents together," I suggested. "I'm sure Dr. Levine would be interested in seeing the psychiatric evaluations he supposedly performed, but has no record of." Dr. Levine frowned. "What do you mean, evaluations I performed?" Before anyone could respond, the doorbell rang. My mother stood quickly, clearly relieved by the interruption. "Who could that be at this hour?" She left to answer the door, and moments later multiple voices could be heard in the foyer. My mother returned looking flustered, followed by Samantha, a woman in a business suit I recognized as my former colleague Lisa, who had become an attorney, and 2 police officers. "Sorry to interrupt dinner," Samantha said, not sounding sorry at all, "but we have some matters to discuss that couldn't wait." The dining room erupted into chaos. My father stood up so abruptly his chair toppled backward. "What is the meaning of this intrusion?" One of the police officers stepped forward. "Mr. Parker, we're responding to concerns about potential elder financial abuse and fraud. We have some questions about the estate of June Parker." My mother's face went pale. "This is a private family matter. Our daughter is unwell and has been making false accusations." Lisa, my former colleague from Chicago, who had become a corporate attorney, placed a briefcase on the table. "Actually, Mrs. Parker, Ramona has been documenting everything since she became suspicious of your behavior." I hadn't just been sitting helplessly in my room the past few days. The first night after discovering the documents in my father's safe, I'd used my hidden phone to text Samantha everything I'd found. She had immediately connected me with Lisa, who happened to be visiting her parents in a nearby town. Together, we had formulated a plan. I'd taken photos of all the documents I'd found and sent them to both women. I'd recorded conversations with my parents using my phone hidden in my pocket. I'd documented the medication they were trying to give me without my consent. We have copies of all the falsified medical records, Lisa continued, pulling out folders, as well as the unauthorized bank transfers, the conservatorship filing that contains numerous fraudulent claims and evidence that you've been accessing Ms. Parker's inheritance without legal authority. Dr. Levine looked increasingly uncomfortable. I should make it clear that I've only met Ramona once at our session earlier this week. I've never conducted any psychological evaluation of her prior to that. Jacob Mercer was already reaching for his coat. I think I should remove myself from this situation. Actually, Mr. Mercer, you might want to stay, the second police officer said. We have some questions about your involvement in preparing legal documents based on falsified evidence. My father's face had turned from red to ashen. This is all a misunderstanding. We were only trying to protect Ramona's interests. By medicating her without her knowledge, by isolating her from friends and colleagues, by fabricating a mental health history to gain control of her inheritance. Lisa's tone was cutting. That's a strange way to protect someone. There's also the matter of Harold Jenkins, Samantha added. Nana June's actual attorney who your family threatened when he tried to inform Ramona about her inheritance. Harold Jenkins himself appeared in the doorway, a thin, elderly man with wire-rimmed glasses and a determined expression. I've brought the official copy of June Parker's will, he announced, holding up a sealed envelope. The one that leaves the majority of her estate directly to her granddaughter Ramona, with explicit instructions that her son Thomas was to have no control over the distribution. My father lunged for his desk in the corner of the dining room, presumably going for the incriminating documents, but one of the officers blocked his path. Sir, I wouldn't advise destroying potential evidence. My mother burst into tears, but they weren't the controlled, manipulative tears I'd seen her use before. These were sounds of genuine distress and fear. It was all Thomas's idea, she sobbed. He said Ramona would waste the inheritance on her city life. He said she didn't deserve it after abandoning the family. I just went along with what he thought was best. My father turned on her furious. Don't you dare pin this all on me, Margaret. You were the one who suggested the medication. You were the one who said we should claim she was paranoid like her grandmother. Their unified front collapsed completely as they turned on each other. Daniel, who had been silent throughout the confrontation, finally spoke. I didn't know they were falsifying documents, he said quietly. Dad told me Ramona was having a breakdown and needed the family to step in. I believed him. I looked at my brother, wanting to believe he hadn't been fully complicit. But you knew about the will. You knew Nana left her estate to me, not to them. He couldn't meet my eyes. I knew there was a will that favored you. Dad said it wasn't valid because Nana wasn't competent when she signed it. I chose to believe him because it was easier. The police took statements from everyone present. Jacob Mercer, seeing which way the wind was blowing, quickly offered to cooperate fully with the investigation. Dr. Levine was horrified to learn his name had been used on falsified medical documents and promised to provide affidavits confirming he had never treated me prior to our recent session. That night, I packed a bag and left my parents' house. The police advised that since no charges had been filed yet, my parents weren't being taken into custody immediately, but the investigation was ongoing. You shouldn't stay here, Samantha said. My guest house is yours for as long as you need it. As I walked out the front door, my father called after me. You're making a terrible mistake, Ramona. Families should stick together. We only wanted what was best for you. I turned back one last time. No, Dad. You wanted what was best for you and you were willing to destroy me to get it. That's not family. That's not love. That's control and greed. I slept more soundly that night in Samantha's guest house than I had since returning to Willow Creek. For the first time, I wasn't afraid to close my eyes, wasn't listening for footsteps in the hallway, or hushed conversations about my fate. The next morning, Lisa outlined our next steps. We'll file for an emergency temporary restraining order against your parents. That will keep them from accessing any more of your accounts or property while the legal process unfolds. Will they go to jail? I asked, surprised to find I felt conflicted about the answer. That depends on how the investigation proceeds and whether the prosecutor decides to file criminal charges, Lisa explained. Financial elder abuse and fraud are serious, but first-time offenders sometimes receive probation, especially if restitution is made. The important thing, Harold Jenkins added, is securing your inheritance and ensuring they can never try something like this again. I nodded, still processing everything that had happened. I can't believe they did this. They're my parents. They were supposed to protect me, not try to destroy me. Samantha squeezed my hand. Family isn't always what it should be. Sometimes the people we choose are more family than the people we're born to. The truth of her words resonated deeply. My parents had seen me not as a person to love, but as a possession to control, an obstacle to wealth they felt entitled to. The realization was painful, but also freeing. What now? I asked. Now, Lisa said with a smile, we take back your life, on your terms. 6 months passed in a whirlwind of legal proceedings, emotional processing, and rebuilding. The investigation into my parents' actions resulted in charges of attempted fraud, financial elder abuse regarding Nana June's estate, and forgery of medical documents. Through it all, I found strength I didn't know I possessed. With Lisa's expert legal guidance, Harold Jenkins's testimony about Nana's true wishes, and the evidence we had gathered, the courts ruled decisively in my favor. My inheritance was secured, Nana June's Victorian house, her investments, and the insurance policy she had maintained specifically to provide me with financial independence. The irony wasn't lost on me that in trying to steal my inheritance, my parents had actually driven me straight to it. I faced a difficult decision about whether to press for maximum criminal penalties against my parents. After much soul-searching and several sessions with a real therapist, I chose a middle path. I agreed to a plea deal where they would make full financial restitution, serve probation, rather than jail time, and undergo counseling. Are you sure? Samantha had asked when I told her my decision. After what they did, nobody would blame you if you wanted them to face the harshest consequences. I'm not doing it for them, I explained. I'm doing it for me. I don't want to carry the weight of vengeance, but I don't want them to walk away unscathed either. My brother Daniel had been reaching out consistently since the night everything came to light. His first message was a lengthy apology. I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't want to see it, he admitted when we finally met for coffee. It was easier to believe you were the problem than to admit our parents could do something so terrible. I'm so sorry, Ramona. His remorse seemed genuine. He had cooperated fully with the investigation, confirming that our parents had discussed their plans with him, though he claimed he hadn't understood the full extent of their deception. I want to make things right, he said. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm trying to be better. Rebuilding trust would take time, but I left the door open for a relationship with my brother. He had been caught between loyalty to our parents and doing what was right, a position I understood all too well. With part of my inheritance, I made a bold decision. Instead of returning to Chicago, I would start my own marketing consultancy right there in Willow Creek. Not because I was giving in to my parents' vision for my life, but because I was reclaiming the town on my terms. I purchased Nana June's Victorian house, which my parents had planned to sell to developers. The moment I walked through its door as the rightful owner, I felt her presence, not in any supernatural way, but in the details she had lovingly maintained in the garden she had tended in the window seat, where she had encouraged my dreams. In the attic, I found a cedar chest filled with journals she had kept throughout her life. Reading them was like having conversations with her across time. I discovered that her relationship with my father had been troubled for decades, with similar patterns of control and manipulation that I had experienced. Thomas has always believed he knows best, she wrote in one entry. He cannot see that love without freedom is merely possession. In another dated just months before her death, I've made arrangements for Ramona. Thomas will be furious when he discovers what I've done, but my granddaughter deserves the chance to live unencumbered by others' expectations. The money is nothing. It's the freedom it represents that matters. Her words gave me strength as I rebuilt my life. I hired a local contractor to convert the ground floor of the Victorian into office space for my new business, Parker Creative. Within 3 months, I had secured contracts with businesses in Willow Creek and neighboring towns, bringing contemporary marketing strategies to places that had been relying on outdated approaches. Samantha became not just a friend but a business ally as we collaborated on rebranding her bakery and expanding it to include a coffee shop that quickly became the town's favorite gathering spot. Throughout these months of rebuilding, I developed deeper connections with people in Willow Creek who had known me or thought they knew me my whole life. I discovered that my parents' reputation in town wasn't nearly as sterling as they had always claimed. Many people had seen through their carefully constructed facade of perfection. Your mother was always on every committee, but nobody actually liked working with her, my high school English teacher confided when she visited the new office. And your father's business practices have raised eyebrows for years. This insight helped me understand that my parents' desperate grasp for control and status had isolated them even as they claimed to be pillars of the community. After the legal matters were settled, my parents made an attempt at reconciliation. They sent a formal letter expressing regret for their actions and requesting a meeting to begin healing our family. The careful wording clearly crafted by a lawyer lacked genuine remorse. Nevertheless, with my therapist's guidance, I agreed to meet them in a neutral location with Lisa present. The coffee shop we chose was buzzing with afternoon customers, providing both witnesses and white noise for our difficult conversation. My parents looked smaller, somehow diminished by the exposure of their true nature. My father's confident posture was gone, replaced by defensive stiffness. My mother's perfect appearance had slipped, her clothes slightly outdated, her smile strained. "We've had a lot of time to think about our actions." My father began, the rehearsed quality of his words immediately apparent. "We realize we made terrible mistakes." "Mistakes," I repeated. "Is that what you call systematically attempting to have me declared mentally incompetent so you could steal my inheritance?" My mother flinched. "We never thought of it that way. We truly believed we knew what was best for you." "That's the problem," I said quietly. "You never saw me as a person with my own rights and agency. I was always just an extension of yourselves, a possession to be controlled." My father's jaw tightened. "We're trying to apologize, Ramona. Can't you meet us halfway? Halfway between truth and deception, between respect and manipulation." "No, I don't think that's possible." I took a deep breath and continued. "I don't hate you. That would require emotional energy I'm not willing to spend on this relationship anymore. But I don't trust you either. If you want any relationship with me in the future, you'll need to respect my boundaries absolutely and demonstrate real change through actions, not words." I outlined my terms. They would need to attend therapy. Real therapy, not the kind where they manipulated the therapist. They would need to acknowledge the full extent of their actions to other family members. And they would need to accept that our relationship would be limited and on my terms. "And if we do all that," my father asked, "then we'll see. Trust is rebuilt slowly, one honest interaction at a time." As I left that meeting, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I had faced my abusers and stood my ground. I had set boundaries without seeking revenge. I had found my voice. Back at Nana June's, now my Victorian house, I sat in her garden watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. The past 6 months had been the most challenging of my life, but also the most clarifying. I had learned that family isn't defined by blood, but by respect, support, and love without conditions. I had discovered that my worth wasn't tied to others' approval. And I had found that sometimes the path forward requires letting go of the very people who should have been lifting you up. Samantha joined me with glasses of wine, sitting companionably as darkness fell and stars appeared above us. "You know what Nana June used to tell me?" I said after a comfortable silence. "She'd say, the people who try to clip your wings are usually the ones who never learn to fly themselves." I didn't fully understand what she meant until now. "She was a wise woman," Samantha replied. "She'd be proud of how you've handled all this." "I hope so," I said, looking up at the stars and imagining Nana June among them watching over me still. The journey hadn't been what I expected when I'd reluctantly packed up my Chicago apartment all those months ago. I'd come home thinking I had failed, only to discover that returning to Willow Creek wasn't surrender, but a different kind of victory. My parents had insisted I move back home for support, but their true motives had been control, manipulation, and greed. In fighting their deception, I had found my strength. In losing what I thought was family, I had found what family truly means. And in returning to my hometown, I had finally truly come home to myself. Have you ever discovered that someone's help was actually about controlling you? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, true support empowers you, it never diminishes you.